Good morning, August 24th, 2022. There's bound to be disputes about the nature of and how I am brainwashed. I live in Tacoma, Washington. I'm 61 years old. I'm deaf. I've been through a lot. But my uh, invitation to you is to join me in the reconstruction of a crime scene on the basis of the theory that if we reconstruct how the crime scene appeared to me, we may gain some insight into what took place. Someone else might argue the way it appears to you isn't what happened, but we can gain some insight into what happened by looking at what you believe. Well and good. Another person might say there's no insight to be offered from any of this. I'll proceed. The crime in question, of course, is the young woman named Dugan, who died in Moscow some 48 hours ago or so. Moscow clearly isn't my precinct. It might seem that I'm operating on a dare, but I'm not. If you look at, reconstruct the crime scene a moment. Shortly before in the media, Roger Waters announced his agency. He flared up calling Joe Biden a war criminal and did a song and dance about China and Russia. People have certain points of view that they believe that American ignorance is a factor in what has happened in the Ukraine. I've seen the film Not One Less by a China company, and I don't really believe that they're off base when it comes to basic values in our Commonwealth. It's about a teacher protecting her public school students. I've seen House of Fools, a Russian film. I don't believe that they're really all that afraid of freedom of expression when it comes to the absurdity of war in places like Chechnya. But of course, it's a repressive government and could be better, as is our own. And I've also noted that some of the film theories, like The Mermaid from China, involve embrace of the neoplastic leapfrog oligarch system of the Arts Council who set me up. So the question is there a logic to what happened, or is the logic being deployed for an ends? In the logic of what happened, you would have a pendulum swinging. I saw this when Donnie Chin was killed in Chinatown. A pendulum swung and killed Cersei Kennedy. The problem with that is that the same people killed both and made it look like a feud. It's called Yo-Yimbo. It's easy to understand when you realize that nobody who would hurt Cersei Kennedy um, would fail to realize that Donnie Chin and Cersei Kennedy were walking the same beat. Public defense of freedom of movement and expression, the basic values of the Commonwealth, not one less, expresses the value system of both Cersei and Donnie. They were akin, they were alike. It's much more likely the person would attack both of them than attack one in revenge for the other. It doesn't make any sense. But it does address the divided system of how I am broadcast represented by a partnership of Roger Waters and Vladimir Putin. The leapfrog oligarchy sees me as opposed to Donnie Chin, therefore hitting Cersei Kennedy as revenge for Donnie Chin because they know I love Cersei Kennedy. And this is the angle that they're playing. So when I say that it could be made to look like because Putin and Trump and Dugin are as one in many respects, Paul Manafort was nearly arrested in connection with the Maidan massacre. It's possible to imagine the idea that was silhouetted in cyber stalking web feet that involve my computer arrangements with the hybrid Xania of Britain and Roger Waters. To believe that the Kennedys helped kill Dugan's daughter to avenge Cersei Kennedy when in reality, and that's what we're going to be imprisoned with, when the reality is that the same force hit both, sort of picturesquing the ambiguities for social control and sort of Caesar and ennui reclining on his nuclear divan arrangement. So what I'm doing and speaking out for the young Dugan girl is speaking out for Cersei too, both of them. I'm concerned about both of them. Now, I was very disappointed in her father when he rushed to make it appear that she fell on the front lines of the sacred Russian struggle to um, liberate Ukraine, which I no more believe than I believe in the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that was represented by Powell and his good buddies in Israel. So to recognize the degree that Ringo Starr is an ally of Vladimir Putin doesn't take any work at all. You can look at Camila Valieva's performances and you can see the influence of the Beatles on the overall texture of the artistic representations in the situation. She does a Picasso. She fell for fourth place to signify the fourth dimension on the brink of war. And I go into this because it's important to know that Picasso was working with a fourth dimensional psychologist from Kharkiv and Moscow named Ouspensky, who Fripp, a friend of Ringo Starr, also is heavily invested in. I met one of their friends, and Obama allowed Yoko Ono to hotwire me into international relations on the basis of Greg Carl's persona about me. Louis Lapham of Harper's Magazine put together an Invisible Man story. I don't know what it is I'm being accused of. It's an existentialist presentation. So that's why they would want to use the panorama of how it appears to me. Now, when you look at the situation with Dugan, he believes that power is in belief. And he's not going to be allowed to entertain the idea that his daughter was killed to make him party to her homicide as an experimental model, a captured genius who's being illustrated because he's been groomed to believe he's part of the inside brain circle. So he's not going to allow himself to be disabused of that idea by the death of his daughter. And even if he would be, he wouldn't allow himself to be, because partly danger to himself and his belief system is very ingrained. So they have him, in position to despise, hate, target me, which is obviously Yoko Ono's goal. But when you look at my poem about the Dugan girl, Lady of Moscow, It illustrates the problems that exist between the tension between poetry and politics. Somebody like me who loves poetry and tries to be even handed about it in the sense of making poetry its own work of art, not play it for politics, is obviously up against tremendous friction when dealing with a master espionage sadist like Roger Waters. But the poem I showed to many people felt that it was fitting. But the key word there is fitting. Someone might misidentify that as thinking I thought that death was fitting, that it was a poetic statement. No, sir. So, what did I disagree with her father about? To me, I don't uh, disavow Not One Less, the Chinese film. I saw her tragedy as similar to, even identical to, the tragedy of the children in Mariupol who were bombed by the Russian army. In the Iraq War, I was treated to the opinion of someone in the rank and file of the military, a little upscale. He said they send out the garbage troops first. Now, the thing is that we were the hostile agency in that war in many respects. So, what are you calling human beings who just happen to be Islam defending their country garbage for? So it's the garbagization of human beings that this treacherous regal highnesses of the leapfrog oligarchy just shrug off. So what they did to me is an experimental model in isolation should be examined to identify the way I believe they're using her father, and he's not permitted to consider. But remember that Roger Waters made his presence felt, because a lot of this is about presence and belief. And now we have the outcome, which was the ultimate goal, which is to create an explanation for their lewd poaching. Because what they did was they set up a system of claiming that the attackers who tortured me have the right to sue me for the storyline because I fulfilled the role that they assigned me. So they get the proceeds because I turned out to be what they claimed I was. And this goes down to Greg Carl's evaluation of motive on Mount Desert Island, X motive. You were just trying to get sexual intercourse. Now, where does this come from in the overall scheme of things? It comes in the overall scheme of things from the Kennedy curse. The idea that free love, recreational passion is a homicide offense because of abortion, for one thing. Remember, these tyrants prescriptively contracted to get abortions from me after they tortured me, and they called it I Am the Walrus. But its sub-theme is sort of the curse of the unknown lover. And the way that's built into the Hollywood framework comes out of Ouspensky's syndicate in the days of Einstein's special theory of relativity. Remember that they used Cirque du Soleil, but it's a sound indicator to the director Cirque, who worked with Robert Arthur. Cirque infiltrated American Hollywood with other Nazi couch cast starlets like Ingrid Bergman. To advance the axis behind the scenes, he used a Jewish wife to get into the graces of Hollywood during the war, but he was a Nazi um, infiltrator, a sort of Operation Paperclip master spy, working with D.W. Griffith and the people behind the scenes. He had been party to um, social advocacy for Einstein's special theory of relativity back when Ouspensky was working with Picasso and Prokofiev, and D.W. Griffith was meeting with Luigi Freddi, the Italian futurist. Marinetti, a friend of Freddi, actually introduced Mussolini to high society in Italy in the 20s. So D.W. Griffith was setting up with Reagan the Axis infiltration of Hollywood behind the scenes. And the names that come out in films like A Time to Love and A Time to Die pertain to um, letters from Elizabeth and those you help shooting you in the back in the end. And he liberates captives of a POW camp, and one of them shoots him while he's reading a letter from Elizabeth. So the people you, if you try to help someone, they will only turn on you is something David Douglas's father used to love to say. He was one of the brainstormers who put the impingement of Mount Beatty in my anti-apartheid letter at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette when they put Donoghue on the back of my father's obituary with the German Green Party. And it was the lisp of the parochial assassin claiming, but yes, McCreary is against apartheid, but he is a gigolo, and we're going to get him on Mount Desert Island by this X motive theme of Greg Carl. So they study at the window of the peep. If you want sex, you are evil. And if you didn't just want sex, to prove you're not evil, you must die with the flock who Waters has summoned the waters of the deluge of climate change with his flame over Africa to fulfill the curse of Ono about. So you have this situation where dehumanization of a person in the name of being a prog rock property is clearly in play, is clearly in motion. And the police allowed it to happen because I opposed Reagan. I identified him as a subordinate of the Hitler system or an involved. I said, look, he went to Bitburg Belsen. I was calling them Cirque the imbecile. And the police psychiatrists and a bunch of Jews were carrying on. I had had lascivious behavior, and it had made me overly demented and thinking and imagining of love making and seduction, so that my mind had become a hypnotic trance of the Neva pornographic espionage group, which actually were behind the script itself. I am the Wallrus working with Yoko Ono. Now, if you look for reality, reality is there's a TV show about an old man who loses his sexual function. And the young woman who was going to marry says, weeping at his bedside, I'll stay with you. And he demands that she not. And then an older woman comes in and says, oh, dearie, 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 we can move beyond that together. His first wife comes back. But the point is that they purposefully degraded sexual function and said, well, if you can get out of your straight jacket from Roger Waters, you'll get the second version and they'll live with the injection system. And that's not proven that Dugan isn't in on that. I'm sure Putin is. And they put Putin something in my mouth, So, but this was Rango's stuff. And if you look back in the USSR, you see that Oswald was in the USSR for a while. And his relationship with Marina Oswald was almost a lampoon of the alibi wifey that Cirque brought into the country. That he was married to a Jew. How could he could be an infamous Nazi? It's because their strategy has changed. So when you look at the situation with like Elon Musk, who wants to go to Mars, get rid of everybody on Earth, and then come back and have it all to himself. You're dealing with people who play a plastic picturesque of the panorama. How can we poach and make it look like a little dab of this, a little dab of that, a little toot with our supper, and so on. And they say, you know, that I put my foot in my mouth. That's really important. Foot and mouth is very important because Ian Wadmaker used to show me foot and mouth disease. Foot and mouth, right? Okay, the carrot tape that they have implanted, and it was like I couldn't get it out of my head, and I uttered it, and Jaime Carmino Natural Languages lateraled it to Andrea Swimmer, the Neva pornographic actress from grade school, who said I wasn't a victim of pedophiles because I wanted some, meaning she prevailed in pushing herself after chasing me up a tree and so on, you know, because I was frightened of her. I didn't know what was going on. And they implanted the curse of the unknown lover. And they've impinged this business about carrots and then what's up, doc? You know, they foot and mouth. So you put your foot in your mouth. And they come trot, trot, trot out with a starlet from Queen Elizabeth's Elizabeth Warren headquarters, the new Dacoits like Cory Booker, forgive, 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 or the black men will avenge on you some more, and so forth. You know, so what you're dealing with in reality is like the idea of a presence, you know, that will forgive, and they could argue that Candy got revenge on Greta because my heart went out to her, you know, and so she's stuck with all of this business, you know. And I love her, but George Monbiot will come and say, no, you don't. You're setting her up, and none of this is true. And of course, I don't particularly think that she needs me. I mean, she needs better, younger person. You know, it's not love necessarily in a closet void of the sexual imagination. But they have it set up for, you know, do good for the Franklin Graham Christians who pulled all this by doing right by Greta, you know, who's Queen Elizabeth, Elizabeth Warren, and the new Dacoits like Cory Booker. So you have this situation that Fauci insidered with Jonas Salk and Rochelle, and you know, the reason we know it was Jonas Salk is because of his very expensive survival of the wisest. You know, you have the, are you wise enough to understand now? Going on from the parochial salvage and the people who tortured me in Pittsburgh, Casper and Zinski. One of them showed up in a house locked from the inside for Salk labor. You know, Louis Kahn has the initials LK. And Lenin's Casper. Okay, they were advocating for the terrible and obscene slanders that they heaped on me after torturing me. And they said that it was fitting, you know, the refusal to alleviate or even stop after they've terribly injured me. I have neurological injuries developing in my arms now. You know, they terrorized me. They child raped Deaf Genie for teaching me sign language. You know, they're orchestrating a panorama of incidents. It's child rape because she has Down syndrome. And they set it all up as a linguistic, semantic about child rape. You know, Dee Dee used to read me the laws of premarital sex and statutory rape. And they used to argue was her being in fulfill of development and me being prepubescent, her being willing and seducting, and me being hostage and seduced. What a, you know, is the Twilight Zone legal issue in the curse of the unknown lover, which comes out of the symbolism of Nazi Germany in the prescriptive script on the Wallrus. So you have to understand that Salk created an idea that it was a sublime meditation. Jordan Peterson plays into it. He calls the appearing of of a wise man in a public center, a form of church. The people come to worship the wise man, the Salk wise man, to be awestruck by the delicate play ensconced in the imagination of the parochial savage. And he is paramystical in his bond with the everlasting and damnation and so on and so forth. It's the sort of thing you would expect from the old Dacoits in the Moon Unit Zappa crowd, selling the right to be famous, who have created a corporation of Warhol's 15 minutes of fame. And they have fakers on beds of nails and so forth. And they do have a serious liability problem in their failure to warn about what they knew when they knew it. And they're trying to fob it off on me with this exotica. My heart goes out to the friends of the Duke and girl. She seems like a really fine person. I'm sorry that this happened to her. I don't know her. I don't know her ideology. But the pressure on all of us to abandon our senses and sensibilities is everywhere. I encourage you to do your level best. I understand that moral compromises are often necessary.